Hello there, Birdie here. Hope you're all well. I've got another video for you here, and this is the Army of Gundabad goes to Scotland. This is a tournament preview video, a little different to what I've been putting out so far. Hope you like this format. So I am recording this on Thursday the 15th of May. Over the weekend coming, on the 17th and 18th of May, I am driving up to Scotland to attend the Battle of Clydewater. This is a GBHL100 event. So the aim of this video is I'm going to be going through, first of all, the army that I'm taking and the special rules, basic introduction to the Army of Gundabad. Then I'll show you the list itself. We will then look at the tactics that I intend to employ and how best to utilise the army, things I need to remember myself, and then we'll be looking at the players and the lists that they're going to be taking, and then we'll be discussing the scenarios. All 6 scenarios have already been announced in the order that they will be played. That does appear to have impacted some people's list building decisions. And what I will do is I will produce a second follow-up video to this one following the event, probably on Monday, where I will go through what actually happened, if I actually managed to listen to all my own advices, if I how I did in each of the games, each of the scenarios, what I learned from it, and hopefully this can help you in future tournaments you might go to, whether that be Army of Gundabad you choose to take or whether it be something else. Generally, there'll be hopefully some good rules to play by to help you do well in events. So let's get into it. So we'll discuss the army and its special rules first of all. So the first thing you get is on Azog or Bolg, if they're your leader, they get a 5+ Master of Battle. You have Here Ends Your Filthy Bloodline. Azog rerolls to wound against Erebor models. We have the Horn of Gorgoroth, so once per game after priority, all friendly models will get +2 courage and all enemy models -2 courage. This can be a massive rule to use on a turn where you break yourself, but you also break your enemy. It doesn't matter who gets priority or goes first in that case. You call this, and if you get it, great, you're going to stick around. And if they get it, they've got -2 courage, so even their heroes, it could be a little bit dicey for them. You have 3 banners to choose from every turn. You can't pick the same banner each turn. It has to rotate between them. You have the Banner of Dol Guldur, which is a battlefield-wide banner for everyone. You also have the Banner of Gundabad, which is all heroes can declare a free heroic march, especially useful at the beginning of the game, considering you've got no shooting to get to your opponents quickly. And then last of all, you have the Banner of Angmar, which is a 6+ Berserker save for all models and a 5+ save for the Berserkers. So, let's get into the list I'm going to be taking. So, first thing we have is Bolg as the leader. On his Felwag, 195 points you're paying for him. He has the 5+ Master of Battle. He also has the Bringer of Death rule, meaning he can get Terror after 2 kills, Harbinger of Evil after 5 kills, and he can get Mighty Hero, 3 points of might every turn after he's got 8 kills. His warband includes 3 warbats. These warbats, their rule is Pluck. Now this means that they can fly over an infantry 25mm base model, and on a 4+ will knock them prone. They do have to charge to do this rule. It doesn't have to be that model they're plucking. They just have to be somewhere on the way, but you can also choose to charge that model with them as well. The key change to this rule compared to the last edition is you can pluck a model that is engaged in combat. It's definitely how I look to use these now. They're very important to the list. The warband also includes 2 Gundabad ogres, the twins. My models look extremely similar to each other. They'll be running around together. They have a great 8-inch move for a monster. With the free march you get, you've got them flying up the board 11 inches in the first turn usually. The warband also includes 2 Gundabad berserkers. These have 2 attacks. They also have extremely good courage, so they are very useful when you need it. And then additionally in that warband there is 6 goblin mercenaries. They are to help get your numbers up. They can also tar pit big enemy heroes that you need to hold up without losing key pieces in your army. Then we have 2 identical warbands. So we have 2 Gundabad captains. I have one of them painted in quite a bright silvery colour. He's known as my bright captain. And then I have one that's in a very dull grey metal colour, and he's called dim captain. Come on to why that makes a difference in a moment. Both warbands are exactly the same. We have 7 Gundabads with a shield. That means they are D6, a little more resilient against shooting, especially if there's some horrible elves around and Dale. 3 Gundabad orcs with spears, so they can be placed into the fights that are most important to you, where you want to make the push, or where you just want a space support, or even if you just want something to get in the way to hold up a heroic combat. And then each warband also includes 2 goblin mercenaries, just to, again, get the numbers up. It gives you 10 goblin mercenaries to put into big enemy things to get in the way and help bulk up your numbers. So that is the army list. Now let's get into the tactics. So first thing, this army only has 7 might. You've got 3 on Bolg and 2 on each of the captains. It is important you go to try and get the mighty hero on Bolg, because you will need that might towards the end of the game. He needs to get 8 kills. On his warg, he charges in with 4 dice. You have a battlefield-wide banner every other turn. That gives him 5 dice. If you pick, the reason I put carefully in brackets is you want to pick when you're doing the first engagement with him. Try to make sure it's the turn where you have the banner. 5 dice makes him reliable. Get him into multiple things. If you can knock them down, get them killed. 2 to 3 kills in the first turn of combat would be ideal. And then from there, you need maybe 2-3 turns, grind through some more, get him to 8 kills. Then you're in a good position. Be aware, of course, if you're up against magic, Bolg is going to be the target. We'll come on to that. Next key thing is I need to remember I've got Master of Battle. So when I'm placing Bolg into combat, I need to be looking at where my enemy heroes are. And am I getting Bolg within 6 inches of whoever would be likely to call a heroic move for my opponent the next turn? Now, Master of Battle 5+ is not particularly reliable. You only get it 1/3 of the time. However, it provides a threat to your opponent, so they have to consider whether they want to call it, whether they want to call it with that particular person. You might get them to then call it with somebody that's outside of 6 inches of Bolg, but is in a not so optimal position and isn't somebody they necessarily wanted to spend might on a heroic move for. So it's an extra thing I need to constantly consider throughout the tournament. And also just remember to do it. If somebody calls a combat nearby, anyone calls a strike nearby, I need to remember. It's an easy thing to forget. Next thing we have is I need to be placing the captains well. So the counterpoint to my placing Bolg where my opponent is likely to call heroic moves, I need to be placing my captains where they affect my key pieces. So I need them behind my lines, ready to call a heroic move, where they affect Bolg, they affect the bats, they affect the ogres, and any other key piece in my army at that point. They are mostly there for heroic move might caddies. I've got 4 might on them. I need to be placing them carefully. Next tactic is I need to time the banner turns. So as I say, with the banners, you generally will use the march in the first turn, get up the board quickly. Your opponent will always outshoot you unless they don't have any bows. But even if they don't, you want to get into combat. Use the march, get up the board. After that, you'll be, for the most part, switching between the Fury save, the Berserker save, and the banner. The banner turns is where your army performs best. Bolg needs the banner. The bats need the banner. The ogres need the banner. The turns you don't have the banner, you'll find they are less effective and you don't win as many fights across the board. You need to just survive the turns you don't have a banner and do the big push on the turns you do have the banner. As I said, with Bolg, the first turn you engage, you want to time it in a way that you can engage the turn that you have the banner. It will mean you'll have a much more effective first round of combat, which is when there is likely to be the highest number of combats going on at once. The key one is make sure you have it on the first turn that Bolg charges in. So that's what I will look to try and do in all my games. Next thing is maximise the bats. So the bats are a threat to your opponent because of how far they can move. They move 12 inches. You want to keep them protected on the way in, behind the lines. Maintain the threat throughout the game if you can. Now, what I mean by this is you don't want to throw all 3 bats in aggressively in one turn. Okay, you might knock a few things prone that you think might be useful. You might stop a hero. Great. But what if you lose a heroic move off the next turn? Your opponent will then jump on these bats. They're only 2 attacks, they're only fight 3, and they're only d4. They die very easily. So my recommendation would be, if you've got a key hero of your opponent's that you really need to stop, yes, getting them prone, throwing a bat in potentially, hopefully getting the 4+ pluck, okay. But weigh up the risk and reward. Is it really that important that they are prone this turn? Or is it really that important that you tie up that hero? If you're facing magic, just say you're against a Saruman, which there is at this event. If I'm within 12 inches of him and I get to move first, it might be a very good idea that I sacrifice a bat to tag up Saruman and allow Bolg to go unmolested for a turn so he can get some kills. That isn't such a bad trade-off. If, however, it was just to knock prone another hero, and all they're going to do is realistically kill 1, maybe 2 troops that turn, but you would lose a bat if you lose the move off the next turn, then weigh up, is it worth it or not? Also, what I would say is if you do get your bats in, consider your exit strategy for the next turn. If you do charge them in somewhere, are they within 6 inches of one of your captain for the next turn to call the move to try and get them out of there? Can you go over the top of somebody and pluck someone and get your bats into a relatively safe position? Now, a couple of examples for you is, could I get them into Bolg's combat or my captain's combat? Could they then call a heroic combat to then get my bats back behind the lines again, ready to be a threat for next turn? Can I fly over something, pluck what I need, but then get my bats into a relatively safe position for next turn that they either can't be tagged or they could be tagged, but in a relatively safe spot where can only be engaged by 1 model, and you've got other models in the vicinity that can definitely help them out. The bats are extremely essential to this list. They can die very easily, but if you play them well, they are one of the key pieces that can win you the whole game. Next, we move on to the Ogre Twins. So the reason I have 2 Ogres in my list and I don't go for an extra captain to get more might or something like that is, if you run 1 Ogre, they're relatively exposed, and if Bolg isn't able to help them that turn, there's not much else that can, and it's too easy for your opponent to get something that's got a higher fight value than their 5, get into them and kill them. They're only 3 wounds d5, they can take damage quickly. If I run 2 of them and I keep them very close to each other, your opponent really has to tag both of them with reliable fights they think they can win. Because even if they manage to get priority or call a heroic combat and get into one of the ogres first, the other ogre can win their fight and hurl. Now, if you've got priority, you can do that hurl and protect your friend, the other ogre, by knocking the opponent off the horse, just knocking them prone in general. Or, even if they do manage to do some damage to one ogre, the other ogre can then hurl into them and knock that guy off the horse. They're prone for next turn, and then actually they're in a bit of a difficult position next turn. They could risk taking a lot of damage themselves. So there's a lot of things for them to consider if you have 2 of them close together. I do find they are a lot easier to defend when there's 2 of them around and Bolg nearby. You could also use the bats in conjunction with the ogres. So if the ogres get things off their horses, the bats can then pluck them and keep them prone and make them irrelevant for the game. Likewise, if something big on foot gets into the ogres, the bats can come over and pluck them and protect them. So the bats and the ogres actually synergize really, really well together. Next, we have the mercenaries. So the goblin mercs, I've got 10 of them in the list. Their main purpose is to get in the way. They're not going to kill that much. They are strength 3, so they might get the odd kill here and there. But the fight 2, defense 4, they do die. But if they can die in the right places for you, that is ideal. If you can get into your enemy's big heroes and get them surrounded by a lot of goblins, even if they're getting kills each turn, you're not that bothered, and they're not doing much damage to your actual overall army, and your Gundabads, your Ogres, Bolg can all go to work on the rest of the army, while your Mercs just get in the way. That's what they're there for. They've only got a 5-inch move. They do have 8 with the March, which is nice. You've got to think about where your opponent is going to be directing their big heroes, and I'm going straight away to send my Mercs into those pockets where I think they'll go, ready to tar-pit them when I get the chance. Next, we have the asymmetrical battle line, which is pick a side to push. The reason I've got 7 shields in each warband and only 3 spears is I want my D6 battle line to be longer than it actually is. So they can shield with 2 dice, and it can act like I have more numbers than I actually have. So if I'm up against an army that outnumbers me, which for most of this tournament it looks like I will be, I can spread out quite a thin line of 14 Gundabads, which is quite a long line. And even though they've only got 6 spears behind them, I can shield on one end of the line, put the spears on the other end. The spear side can fight. If they win, I'm strength 4, I'm fight 4. There's a good chance I can do some damage. I've got ancient enemies, dwarf and elf, to help me re-roll and get wounds against them as well. And on the side where I don't have the spears, I can shield with those Gundabads and try and hold up the enemy as long as I can, with maybe some mercs behind them in reserve to plug the holes the next turn and stop them breaking through. But it allows my army to act like it has more numbers than it actually has, whilst relying then on the quality of Bolg, the Ogres, the Bats to do the key bits of work for me. And the next, remember the horn. So this is probably the thing I'm most guilty of when I run this army, is I forget I've got the Horn of Gorgoroth. I need to remember I've got the horn. Pick the moment as well for it. When I break my enemy, that is the turn to do it, most likely. There will be potentially other moments that might make sense to use it as well. But for the most part, that's when I'll be using it. I just need to remember to use the horn. If we're playing domination, for instance, or reconnoitre, and I've got things close to the edge of the board but I've broken, even if I've not broken my opponent, it might be worth me running the horn, using the horn at that moment, just to make sure they do stay on the board. Just got to remember to use it. And then last of all is Endure Magic. So Bolg is going to be targeted with magic when I face it. And he's only got 3 will. He does run out. Every time magic is cast on me, I need to consider 1, what it's been casted on, and 2, I'll be looking at, if I don't resist this, what is likely to happen? Is there a threat to Bolg if I don't? And that will then determine and decide for me how much will to throw at it, if I need to use might to help the resist as well. If I'm up against an army like Army of the White Hand, as an example for you, they are an entire army of fight 5 or lower. No one in the army has strike. They cannot get above Bolg's fight 7. If he's being sorceress blasted, if he's being transfixed, compelled, anything like this, it's not the end of the world, because as long as he's got might on him, and even like the turn I've got the banner, for instance, as long as I can get a 6 in the duel roll, he's okay. There's no way they can get over him. I still would like to resist where possible, and that will be decided by what it's been casted on, and whether I use might to resist it, whether I want to keep him on the wag, I'm close to getting to 8 kills, all of these sort of considerations. However, there's not as much threat to him if he doesn't resist something. Whereas, for instance, if I face Battle of Fornost and they had Glorfindel nearby, and Kieran does a call wins and knocks me prone and off my wag, the big threat is Glorfindel can go into Bolg, and he's knocked down on the floor, so there's no risk to Glorfindel at all. And even if I strike up, I'm essentially wasting a might point to do absolutely nothing. And he can also strike back against me, and he's got a +1 fight on me. Advantage on the D3 strike. So it's a major issue to consider then. I really would like to resist that. So these are the things you've got to consider. I also think if they cast it on a 6 and there's not that much risk to you, it might be better just to let it go through for the most part, because you don't have a great chance of resisting anyway, unless it's a really key moment where you really want to do something. I don't think it's worth resisting most of the time. Whereas if they cast it on like a 3 or a 4 or something, you've got a very good chance of resisting. And if you can get him into combat that turn and get kills, it's probably worth it. Anyway, now then, let's move on to the players. So these are the lovely gentlemen that are attending the event this weekend. We're going to just talk through their lists a little bit. I won't go into too much detail. I'll just briefly touch on each of them, and then we'll get on to the scenarios. So first one we've got here is Chris Stone. Now he's running a Last Alliance list of 35 models. He's gone for Elendil, Elrond and a Rivendell captain with a mix of mostly elves with also 5 Númenóreans in there, a mix of bows and shields. He does also have a banner in the list. Pretty standard way of building Last Alliance. You want to go mostly heavy on the elves, seeing as though they're the ones that get the 6, the 1 dice when you charge them to roll a 6 to do an automatic wound. Elendil is the big hitter with the strength 5, the +1, the free heroic combats, and Elrond is there to knock stuff on the floor. Very good list, very reliable, very competitive. The only thing it lacks is mobility. He does have Elrond on a horse, however, so he does have at least one particularly mobile model. Next one we have is Ross Wolstenholme. Now he has the Reclamation of Osgiliath with a 48 model army, and this is Boromir with the banner, Faramir and Madril. So he's got 12 might in there. He's got a lot of warriors of Minas Tirith, few rangers, and well, actually quite a lot of rangers, 14 rangers as well. So there's a lot of bows in here as well, considering Faramir and Madril have got them as well. So 16 total, and then he's got 3 knights to give him a little bit of mobility. Very well balanced list. Could do well with its numbers at some of these scenarios. You've got a very big, reliable hitter. He is a little susceptible to magic, but he does have 6 might that he can maybe use to help that out as well. Madril helps with the first round of hold ground we've got. And he's got a few knights in there, which I like, so that gives him a bit of ability as well. All round good list. Next, we've got Adam Woznitzer. Assuming there's some Polish background there. Correct me if I'm wrong if you do listen to this, Adam. We have the Blackgate with a 41 model army. This includes the Mordor Troll Chieftain as the leader, Mouth of Sauron, and then just a Morannon Orc captain. There is also in this list a Mordor Troll with a drum to get up the board quickly, which is, I'd say, the right pick and competitive pick. For 800 points, there's likely to be a lot of good armies with a lot of shooting. You need to get to them quickly. He's got a lot of Morannons, as you would expect. That's all you can take in the list. Good solid list. Lovely special rules linked to the Mouth of Sauron. I think he'll do well with that. It's a very good competitive list. We're seeing do well at a lot of tournaments. Next, we have Andrew Stone with Depths of Moria. Now this is the Balrog with 4 goblin captains and then a lot of goblins. There's also a smattering of bows in there. There's 6 goblins with bows as well, just to threaten some horses, which I like. He's got 63 models total in here, so this is a massive horde army. Yes, they will die, but he's got enough that they should give him a lot of time for the Balrog to do the work. This list relies on the Balrog. If the Balrog has a good game, he'll have a good game. If the Balrog has a bad game, or comes up against a particularly bad counter to it, he's going to struggle. I'm personally not a fan of these sort of lists myself, because you're too reliant on one model and how he does for you. And if your opponent does have something to counter it, you're in a bit of trouble. But the numbers should help carry him through. I think he's built it about as optimally as he can. And the Balrog is an incredible model and a bit of the Lord of the Rings lore. So it's always nice to see some on the table. I don't particularly want to face it, because if the Balrog does happen to have one of those really good games, you're in trouble. Next we have Christopher Murfitt. Now he's got a 64 model Ugluk Scout army with Ugluk, an Isengard captain, Snaga, and 2 Isengard Scout captains. He's got a decent amount of shooting in the list here. I believe it's 20 bows looking at this here, which is pretty incredible. Only 18-inch bows, but they are strength 3, so could do well with the shooting. He's also got a banner in there, a drummer, as well as a load of orcs to give him some spear supports that his Uruk-hai badly need. Very good army this, 64 models, fast and mobile, Ugluk with his amazing rules to give you the +1 to wound and fearless. It's a very good army, competitive. You do see this at a lot of top tier events, maybe not so much at 800 points. So it's an interesting pick to run at 800 points, but I think it will do well. His only issue is he's only really got Ugluk that can do big damage and can get his fight value up to a decent level. So I'd be interested to see how he'd deal with a really big hitting army or with multiple big hitters. He might struggle to have an answer to those. Ugluk Scout generally works best at the lower points, between about 500 and 700, I'd say. But good luck to him with the list. It is a good list. He's built it, again, about as well as he could on paper. Next, we've got Stuart Collett. This is Minas Tirith 42 model army. He's got 6 bows in the list, which are Citadel Guards with the Strength 3 longbows. He's got some quite a mix of all different troops. He's got a few knights, a few Tin Can warriors of Minas Tirith, but there's also quite a few guards of the Fountain Court as well. Denethor, Boromir, and Faramir. So he's got a good amount of might in the list here. It's just a good, well-rounded, balanced list. Pretty standard Minas Tirith list, just with Fountain Court Guard, which you've not really seen so far in this edition at events. He's also gone for the double banner, which is interesting. In Denethor's warband, and also one in Faramir's warband. So maybe there's a sneaky play there relating to victory points on the banners, where he outnumbers his opponent's banner 2-1. Interesting build, Stuart. Next, we've got my friend Finlay Staniforth. Now, he has the Defenders of Helm's Deep, 50 model army. Theoden, Aragorn, and Legolas. Live warbands with all 3 of them. The 3 point of might on Aragorn will be absolutely key, keeping Theoden safe as the leader. He's got a good mix of Warriors of Rohan and the Galadrim, as you would expect, with a good amount of shooting as well. Has taken some Warriors of Rohan also with a bow, so it's quite an even mix. He's got 9 Elves with bow and 7 Rohan with bow. There's 1 banner in the list here as well. There's also quite a few throwing spears, so anyone that's going to be having to approach Finlay is then they're going to be taking a lot of punishment from bows and then throwing spears. Very nasty list, this 50 models. He's going to do well with this, I think. Very competitive list. Next, we've got Marty Sanderson with a Usurpers of Edoras 71 model list. Now, this is a very interesting one. It's been criticised quite a lot, Usurpers of Edoras, of not being a particularly competitive army, and he's running Frecker, General Targ, Lord Thorn, and then 3 Hill Tribe Chieftains. He's got a nice mix of the troops, so he's taken a few Flaming Brands, a few two-handed weapons. There's quite a lot of bows in the list as well, which I think is the right way to build it. Surprisingly, it's actually a decent shooting army just because of the sheer volume of bows. But this list is all about its numbers more than anything. 71 models. It's the highest of any army that's been taken this weekend. The aim is overwhelm. Hold ground, reconnoitre. Yes, you'll take casualties and die. You've got a lot of low defence troops, but he can overwhelm. He's also got a couple of Crebain in there, which is definitely essential to the list to give you the mobility and the threat from 12-inch and fly. Be interested to see how he does with this list. It's not the most competitive on paper, the list itself, but because of his sheer weight of numbers, he could do well depending on his matchups as well. So, good luck, Marty. Brave choice, and yeah, it'd be nice to see usurpers do well. Hopefully not against me. Next we have Andrew Kerr. Now, going from one end of the spectrum to the other, we have an 8 model Fangorn list. This is a Treebird with Merry and Pippin on top, Beechbone, Birchseed, and 3 Ents, a mix of chestnut, beech, and ash. This will do very well at things like To the Death, potentially hold ground. However, there is other scenarios like Destroy the Supplies and Reconnoitre where it may have a bit more of a problem. Fangorn is what I would call a ruiner list. You turn up to the event, and if you get Fangorn at one of the scenarios it's very, very good at, you can really struggle, and it's almost an auto loss. But also, if you go into playing against them in a scenario they're not very good at, you almost have an auto win. Personally, I would never run a list like this at an event because it's not balanced enough that it can deal with all scenarios. It will just do brilliantly at some and not very well at others, but it can just ruin other people's events by bringing it. I imagine it's reasonably fun to play. I've got a friend that plays Fangorn quite a lot, and I play against him, but it's never particularly fun for me to play against. They just stand there, shoot you. When you get into them, they're basically stationary the whole game, and Treebird in particular is a real problem to try and shift. But you can nearly always beat them on objectives if you play it right. So, interested to see how he does in some of the harder scenarios. It's got to be piloted very well, so be interesting to see how Andrew does with the list. Next we have David Reed with an Erebor Reclaimed list. This is a 39 model list containing Thorin, Gloin, Ori and Bofa. This is the very standard way to build this that we've been seeing at a lot of events lately, 800 points. Ori gives Gloin the benefit of two-handing without a penalty. Thorin can also hand and a half the same way. They can get might back when they kill anything. Both Gloin and Thorin have strike from fight 6 and 7, and Bofa gives them a 3+ magic resist bubble. So you find that the 4 heroes stick really close together, and it bubbles. The only issue you've got with this army is there's no mobility at all. So they have to stay as a bubble. Anything on the outside of the bubble at the end of the line can get killed quite quickly, and things like domination in particular and reconnoitre is a bit of a struggle for this army. It's a very good army, very competitive, very hard to break down. It will do extremely well at some scenarios, To the Death and hold ground and things like that. It'll just win that grind, but it just has some deficiencies on a few of these scenarios. It does have the march, and I think he'll do well with the list. He's just going to have to play it well on those few bad scenarios. Next we have David Farmer. Well, it says David Farmer, but everyone knows him as Dave. Army of the White Hand and 59 models. It seems that Dave's fallen in love with this list lately. I think every tournament I've seen him at, he's had this army. It's one of the most competitive out there at the moment. It's maybe not ideal at 800 points. It's probably at its best at 600 and up to 700, where your opponent is likely only to have one particularly big threat. I suppose the only weakness I see that could happen for Dave is that if he comes up against a list with 2 particularly big hitters, he's only really got an answer for one of them. Yes, Grima can reduce what one can do by making it harder for them to spend might. However, it could still, it's not the optimal level for this army, 800 points. I'm sure he probably might admit that himself. However, this army is extremely competitive at any points level. Even against the particular big hitting armies where there is 2 big hitters, he's got the numbers that he can afford to tar pit one of them anyway. So I would expect Dave to do extremely well with this list. Very good list, built as I'd expect. A lot of bows in there. He's gone for 1 banner, nice mix of Uruk-hai, Orcs, and also Wagmen. He's got only 2 Crebain in the list, but he has gone for quite a few Wag Riders. Personally, I'd favour Crebain over Wag Riders. I'd drop 2 Wag Riders for 1 Crebain any day. The 4 wounds and the fly makes them a lot bigger a threat. But Dave, of course, is one of the most successful players on the circuit right now, so who am I to really question that? Very good list. Expect him to do very well. And then we move on next to Alex Bordas. So he's taking his beloved Black Riders that he's taken to a number of events this year so far. This is the Witch King on a horse, and then it is an additional 6 ring wraiths on a horse. Nasty list to face. It does stop your heroes from acting for most of the game. It's got some really horrible special rules. The Screech, the Nazgul Screech, is now limited to just 1 per turn, which does limit the effectiveness of this list. However, it can still do well. It will, however, struggle in some scenarios, such as Reconnoiter in particular, destroy the supplies. It can't really defend its supplies. It will be tough for Alex to do well with all the numbers, the high numbers lists that have been taken to this event. Good luck to him. He does have good experience of using the list, and it's a very tricky one to face, but he might just struggle on the numbers front. Next we have Jakob Krokmal. So we have a 40 model Men of the West list. Built slightly differently to how a lot of people have. I have seen this win events built like this, which is the Aragorn Legolas Gimli build, with a couple of Rohan bows, mostly Rohan warriors with throwing spears with Minister tin cans on the front. Aragorn LSR is incredible now. 3 point of might, 6-inch banner, resistant to magic, Ring of Barahir. He's extremely good. Legolas doesn't need an introduction. He's in so many lists and he's horrible to face. Broken rules and far too cheap for what he does. He's on a horse in this list, so he's 125 points. He should, for how ridiculous his profile is, he should easily be 150, if not more. He's badly undercosted right now. I like that Jakob's taken Gimli in the list. That is slightly off meta, but I do like that inclusion. Gimli is still very good and value for his 100 points. He just doesn't look it when you compare him to Legolas for the same points, but that's just because Legolas has been created completely wrongly in this edition. Very good list. I expect Jakob to do well. Numbers 40 models is about what you want minimum really for 800 points. I'd be interested to see how he does against some of the really high model count lists. Next we have James Smith with a 26 model Rangers of Mirkwood. Now this is a particularly horrible list to face normally when it's built without dwarves. However, credit to James here for trying it. He's running Legolas Tauriel with 21 Mirkwood Rangers, but then he's gone for Thorin, Gloin and Dwalin, so 3 big hitting dwarves. It's only 26 models. That is going to be tough for him in some matchups. He's got incredible shooting, however, and if you do eventually survive the shooting and get into combat with him, he does have a lot of might and 5 big hitters that will be very difficult to deal with. So he could surprise people with this list. Depends how he plays it and the matchups that he gets, but it's an interesting build. I'd be interested to see how it does on the playing field, on the board. Next we've got Jack Ling. He has a 45 model Minas Tirith list. This is similar to the previous list, but with an additional hero of Iralas in the list, with Faramir, Boromir, Denethor. There is no Fountain Court Guard in this one, however. He's gone for a few Citadel Guard with longbows, but there's 5 of those. But mostly it's Warriors of Minas Tirith with a single banner in the list as well. So I would personally favour the other list because it included Knights of Minas Tirith to give you some mobility. There is a bit of a struggle for mobility in this list. That would be my only criticism. But I think you still should do well. It's a very, very solid battle line. A lot of might in there. I do rate Relas as a character in here. Good points, efficient model. We'll see how he does with this. Next we've got Alessio Satangiele. Apologies on the pronunciation there. I thought I'd done all right up to this point, but I think I've murdered that one. Santangele, maybe. If you listen to this, Alessio, correct me, please. I'd like to know for next time. There's an 800-point garrison of Ithilien with 55 models. There's a lot of bows in the list. We've got Faramir, the captain, Madril, and Damrod. This list relies mostly on its shooting. He does have 5 Knights of Minas Tirith to give him a bit of mobility, which is nice to see. But actually, I will just have to correct myself. I'm looking at this. I saw the Osgiliath veterans with a bow, and I thought, oh, it's a shooting list. But actually, he's got another 3 ranges of Gondor with bow. But otherwise, it's all Minas Tirith warriors with shields or shield and spear. Very, very interesting build. Off the standard sort of build you see with this list. So I'll be very interested to see how this does for Alessio. There's a lot of D6 and 7 in there with the shield wall. Good luck, Alessio. That's a very curious build. Next, we've got Richard Haggarth. He's got a 43 model Muster of Isengard. This is Saruman on a horse with Grimmer and 2 Uruk-hai captains. He's gone for 7 Berserkers in the list with a decent amount of pikes to support them, as well as some Uruk-hai with shields to give him some D6 as well, which I fall back as the right way to build this instead of just purely spamming Berserkers. And also he's got a few crossbows in there to give him a bit of a shooting threat, and the obligatory banner. A good list. Lacks a bit of mobility, but the bubble and the phalanx will be difficult to break down. I really like the inclusion of the Uruk-hai with shields, 8 of those in there. Protect your flanks, give you some D6. Good build, Richard. Good luck dealing with the mobility, though. That's the only issue I can see with the list occurring. Next we have Michael Henry. Now he's actually running Army of Gundabad like me, but with a very, very different build. So his is 3 Gundabad captains, one of which is his leader, and then it's just 2 Troll Brutes. There are 6 Gundabad Berserkers, 9 Gundabad Orcs with shield, 9 with spear, 3 Warbats, just like me as well, and then he's actually got an actual banner as well. So he's got 8 might on the board, 1 more than I have, but without the Master of Battle. 2 Troll Brutes, which can hit extremely hard with their tramples. They only move 6 inches, however. They're only D6. They can take damage. They can be struck over as well with their fight value. And you've only got 1 might on the Orc Commander on top of each. However, even if you kill the Brute, the Orc Commander does pop out. So, considering the Orc Commander is essentially a Gundabad Orc Captain, minus 1 defense and minus a might point, a Gundabad Orc Captain is 60 points. That means the Troll Brute... 60 points for the Gundabad Orc Captain. If you take off a might point and a defense, that captain's probably worth about 45 to 50 points. It means you're actually only paying about 75 to 80 points for the Troll Brute itself. And for a 3 attack, 4 wound, trampling war beast, it's pretty good value. The only issue is the big base, the 6-inch move, and the army itself. It lacks any big hitter outside of the Troll Brutes. The bats will be really useful against any heroes the enemy has on foot. Very interesting build this. I'm actually facing Michael in the first round. We actually got a draw, Army of Gundabad against Army of Gundabad. Looking forward to seeing how he plays this. And we're going to have 3 Warbats against 3 Warbats. Very, very interesting build. We'll see how it goes. I will let you know. He's my first draw. Next we have Sam Robertson. He's got a 38 model Battle of Fornos. This is Eonar, Glorfindel and Círdan, the standard 800 point build, I'd say, with the exception that he's not taken any Hobbit to get his numbers up. He's not taken a Ranger of the North or anything like that. He's gone heavy on the Rivendell elves with bows and also shield and spear. I think that is the right way to go, alongside 3 knights to give him some mobility. Well done on that choice. So you've got Glorfindel with the 12-inch move, Eonar with his horse and lance, and 3 knights as well, with some Warriors of Minas Tirith behind the elves to just provide the extra dice in the fight while being relatively cheap to get his numbers up. So this is a good list. Always does relatively well. Battle of Fornost. Needs to be piloted well. Círdan's a nasty threat to anyone with his call winds. Should do well. We then have Alan Liddell. This is a 48 model Defenders of Helm's Deep. A very different build in this one. There's no Aragorn. Instead, he's gone for Théoden with Haldir, Legolas and Gamling. So there is the potential for might regeneration. You've got more heroes. He's also got just slightly less models than Finlay had with his Defenders of Helm's Deep list as well. There's a banner in here, a lot of throwing spears as you would expect, and the only things that have bows in the list are the elves. He's got a total of 15 elves with bow, and then you've got Haldir as well as Legolas. So it's arguably more of a shooting list than the other, but it lacks that little bit of extra hitting power that Aragorn would have provided. However, Haldir is fight 6 and has strike, so and it's a hand and a half, so he can 2-hand as well. Next we have Stephen Denby with a 44 model Lothlorien list. Now Lothlorien is missing quite a few of its pieces until the next book comes out. However, I still think this list has a lot of legs to it. The double caster with the 3 point of will each turn for Galadriel and Celeborn. He's got Haldir in there to give him a fight 6 striker as well. You get a +1 to wound with Celeborn. Haldir can also 2-hand to give it a +2. The elves can hand and a half as well to give you more than that. What is quite interesting, however, is he has taken 14 Lothlorien warriors. Now, these are the low defense elves in this list. You can take throwing weapons on them, but he's not chosen to do this. He's chosen to go for elf bows on all of them, so there's a lot of shooting in the list. I'd be personally quite interested to build this and try and max both, where you get the bows to 33% and the throwing weapons to 33%, and play the Lothlorien warriors behind your main line and use them to, once the line engages, flank around the enemy and hit them with the throwing weapons on flank, like counter charge. I think that's how I see it on paper as the optimal way to build the list. You've got the D6 on the front to stop enemy shooting. You've got a lot of good shooting yourself that you can have with your normal Galadriel warriors, and then you can use the Lothlorien warriors as your kind of like reserve force that come into the battle round the flanks as a counter charge. Interesting to see how Stephen does with this list. I think this is being slept on a little bit because the list looks a bit bland on paper, but I think it's very competitively viable. Maybe struggles a little with mobility, but you are going to be getting a lot of priorities because he does have Galadriel with the mirror, giving him a +1 to his priority rolls. So Stephen's a very, very good player, and I think he can make this work well, despite its mobility deficiency. But we'll see how he does. Interesting list. And then the last one to discuss is Connor Kerr. So he has a 58 model Arnor list with Arvedui, Malbeth, Argadir and a captain. There is mostly warriors of Arnor, some rangers to give him a bit of shooting as well. I'm not seeing any one knight of Arnor with Argadir. So there's a bit of a lack of mobility, could hinder him in some scenarios, but he does have a 58 model army that is extremely hard to put damage into, because not only the D6, but then you've got the Malbeth saves as well. Very, very tough army to face. can be quite frustrating to face as well, because you're really struggling to get any damage through. But very competitive, will do well. Would have personally taken more knights, but we'll see how Connor does with it. So now let's get onto these scenarios. So this is the order they are being played in. We have hold ground first of all. Now my approach to hold ground will be I roll for Bolg to come on first. If my opponent deploys first, I will look to be aggressive if the opportunity allows. If my opponent has some warbands or a key piece exposed, I will try and set it up that I can be aggressive the next turn. I'll want Bolg to come on first so that the captains can be the ones to spend might if needed to be near him. I don't want to be spending Bolg's might on anything unless it's essential. The key with hold ground is get the models into the middle and hold the middle. Bolg and the ogres are all dominant 3 each, so if I can get them into the middle, it would be ideal to then try and get there and hold it, and it'd be hard to outnumber me in there due to that many dominant models. I can also use the ogres to hurl stuff away and barge and things like that as well, which would be very useful. A lot depends on the role for hold ground and who's going first. Depends on how I play it a little bit. Destroy the supplies with this army. What I'll look to try and do is get up the board quick, use my march, try and bring the fight to their half of the board. Instead of defending my own supplies, I'll just try and pin them in place in their half of the board and then wait for the right moment to send the bats in. Maybe do some sort of flank with the berserkers, Bolg, the ogres, any of my fast movers really. But ensuring that I'm keeping my line solid, that they can't break through to mine. Worst comes to worst and they get to mine, as long as I get all of those, I then just need to break them, do damage, get their banner off the board would also be quite key. To the death is quite an interesting one for my army. I only really have one way of dealing with something big, which is Bolg. But there's a lot of points in this for killing the enemy general, 5 points available. I do find the best way to approach to the death is go very, very hard into the enemy general as quick as possible. Try and get yourself a favourable situation against them, and also focus on getting the break of the enemy army. That's where a lot of the points sit for to the death, as well as 25%ing the enemy. Of war, I need to protect my captains. Because they fight 5, strength 5 and D7, there is always this temptation to put them into the fight and use their fight value, use their strength, use their defense. But you can't risk it in this scenario because your opponent will be choosing one of them to kill and I've got to choose one to protect. So I need to just keep them both away from the lines, protected, near my other big pieces like Bolg and the ogres, and use their might just for heroic moves and that sort of thing. I don't want to put them in any risky situations at all. So I just need to keep reminding myself, don't give in to temptation. Moving on to reconnoitre, I'm going to deploy the thinner, longer line that I talked about before with the shields. The spear's only picking as and where I need to focus my dice. The bats and berserkers will be key. The berserkers for their courage, if I do get broken, to get off the board later on. The bats can also get off the board, but they're also very much needed in the main fight. I can try and get normal models off the board. I can use my march to get up the board quick as well, especially early on. It's very, very important to me that Bolg comes on in this scenario. More than half my army is Bolg's warband. I badly need him on the board. I will also be looking to use him as a goalkeeper to constantly be cleaning up infantry to make sure there's not models getting off the board. And then last of all, moving on to domination, I'll try and hold 2 home objectives in my side of the board with my 2 berserkers, keeping them out of sight and hidden if possible. And then if I can just win the main fight in the middle of the field, and then towards the end of the battle, if I can get on top and win the overall fight, I can push out to make sure I try and hold the others as well to maximise my VPs. So that would be my strategy for how I can play these games. It does very much depend on the matchup. It will change how I approach some of these. So what we'll do is I will produce a second video on Monday where I'll go through what my plans were, how I deviated from those, which will obviously happen, how I did, the armies I faced, at what scenarios. We can discuss the other lists and the other armies that did well at the event, and also we'll talk about what I've learned and what I do differently going forwards. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please do like and subscribe. I'll be releasing more videos of different varieties to do with the Middle-earth strategy battle game shortly. And please drop a comment, let me know what you think, if you enjoyed it, if you like this format, if this was helpful for you. And yeah, good luck to everyone that's attending this tournament this weekend. Look forward to seeing you all, and let's have a good one. Have a nice evening, everyone. Goodbye.